Your daily dose of sports talk is here. Highlights, interviews, and analysis. From the entertainment capital of the world, SportsWrap with Jason Page starts now.
Yes, it does, and great to have you with us on this Tuesday edition of the show. We got a lot to do over the next 60 minutes. Dennis Bernstein drops by later in the show to talk some hockey. We're at that time of the year. For the NBA and for hockey, we're at that time of the year. Got the Olympics coming up. They had the Winter Classic in Miami, and a huge injury for one NHL team in a major market that could certainly have some major ramifications on their hopes of trying to make the postseason. We'll get into all of that and more. Also some NBA talk to get to, which we'll also do here in the big story. NFL, coaching news to talk about as well. So a lot to talk about here as we get this Tuesday edition of the show started. Sam Yarnell will be here. We've got odds and ends. There was a crazy FCS championship game, college football last night. We'll talk about that as well. But we start things as we always do with the big story. And the big story on this Tuesday is still what's going on in the NFL right now as it relates to Black Monday, which really started on Sunday with Raheem Morris being fired and then spilled into Monday with some more firings. And as much as we've talked about the guys that have been let go, and we'll get into some of the guys that got let go after we finished the show yesterday, namely Pete Carroll and Jonathan Gannon, who's pictured here. As much as we could talk about the guys that have been sent packing, there is still a story to be told about the guys that haven't been sent packing. And that is as much a part of the story of this post-regular season conversation as anything we're going to talk about. Zach Taylor in Cincinnati, keeping his job despite the struggles of the Bengals. And yes, injuries to Joe Burrow have been a big part of that story, and certainly part of the conversation that has to be had about what the Bengals have and haven't been here over the last couple of years. But the slow starts for this team every year, that is certainly something that is attributed to Zach Taylor, and certainly a part of the dialogue when we get into the sort of the post-mortem every year on the Cincinnati Bengals. Then there is Mike McDaniel in Miami. And how does Mike McDaniel, continue to keep his job, considering the struggles of the Miami Dolphins and Tua Tagovailoa? And for a couple of years, the problem with Tua was, the concussions and injuries and this and that. Well, this year, that wasn't the story. And this team struggled mightily. So much so that they wound up benching Tua Tagovailoa and went with Quinn Ewers over the final few games of the season. Now you have this dynamic where Mike McDaniel is sitting down with Tua to try and hammer out whatever the future looks like. You have Tua talking to the media and saying, yeah, I wouldn't mind a fresh start somewhere else. So there's the Mike McDaniel situation, in Miami that still obviously has to play out. And then there's John Harbaugh. And this is one of the more fascinating situations to me. After Mike Tomlin, the longest tenured head coach in the NFL, 17 years, something like that, for John Harbaugh. We know about the Super Bowl, championship, and all of that is great. But it feels like the Ravens right now are at a crossroads. And they have to decide, are we going to continue down the same path with the same Lamar Jackson, who at times this year didn't look like the same Lamar Jackson, even without the injuries, and you had to wonder, was he still the same guy, that we gave all this money to? And again, you're always paying for what somebody did in the past, as opposed to what you may get in the future, with a lot of these high-priced, contracts that a lot of these guys get. But there were certainly some people questioning whether Lamar Jackson was now entering this new phase of his career where maybe he couldn't run it as well, he wasn't as mobile or as elusive. And if he's not that same guy, what does that mean? Because he was never the most accurate passer in the world. And if you lose that dynamic for him to run the football, what is he and all that? But how John Harbaugh fits into all of that is certainly an interesting conversation. There were a lot of people thinking that the loser of this Steelers-Ravens game whether it be Mike Tomlin with the Steelers or John Harbaugh with the Ravens, that one of those guys could wind up out of a job at the end of the year. There were all these reports of, maybe Mike Tomlin getting ready to go into the broadcast booth and go try his hand in that. Regardless, if the Ravens let go of John Harbaugh, there's going to be a whole bunch of teams lining up to have a conversation with him to potentially acquire his services. So as much as, and look, who knows? There may still be more moves. Matt LaFleur in Green Bay with the Packers, they haven't been as enamored with him as you think they might be. And depending on what that team does in the playoffs, you have to wonder if Matt LaFleur could be gone. There are still a lot of moves that could potentially take place here over the final, over the next week or 2 or 3 weeks, depending on what happens in these wild card rounds and what some of these teams, opt to do. Obviously, Zach Taylor is staying put. The organization has made that clear in Cincinnati with the Bengals. There is a little more doubt in the Baltimore situation because nothing's really come out of there that tells you one way or the other which way Steve Bisciotti is leaning. I'm sure they're going to have these exit conversations, as teams do when the season ends. I mean, look, that's how Tom Thibodeau wound up out of a job with the Knicks. They had these exit conversations, and all of a sudden, a report comes out, Tom Thibodeau's out of a job with the New York Knicks. I mean, that's the way it happens sometimes. Sometimes when you have these conversations after the season ends, it just becomes abundantly clear that two sides can't really work together anymore, or one side wants to move on from the other. That could be still what happens when it comes to John Harbaugh. Just to go back for a moment, and the guy on the screen right there, Kevin Stefanski, is a guy that could obviously wind up, having his services needed somewhere. Somebody's going to want to take a shot at Kevin Stefanski, you'd have to think, in this offseason coaching cycle. Jonathan Gannon in Arizona with the Cardinals just never seemed like a great fit. It never worked out very well. On the Pete Carroll thing, though, I want to say this. He deserves a better ending to his career. Guy that's a 2-time national champion college football coach and a Super Bowl winning head coach. Only a couple of coaches have ever done it, and he's one of them. It feels like Pete Carroll deserved a better send-off than the one he got with the Raiders. But at the same time, I have to say this. If you're Pete Carroll and you took the job with the Raiders, you kind of also had to know what you were getting yourself into. Raiders, by the way, now paying 5 different head coaches. None of them are coaching for the team. We're coming back. Welcome back to the show. Continuing on this Tuesday. Oh, don't worry. There's some more NFL to get to. NBA and NHL as well. We got a cornucopia of sports today on the show. Sam Yarnell hangs out with us for the first time on the program. So there were a couple more coaching firings that came on Black Monday after we had finished the TV version of the show. But if you're following us on our SportsWrap YouTube, you would have seen us covering the dismissals of Jonathan Gannon and Pete Carroll as well. That's why you've got to subscribe to the SportsWrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. Go and check that out because it's got all of the latest news, stuff that breaks when we've already finished putting together the TV show. So Sam Yarnell, let's get into some of the coaching stuff that's going on. The news this morning that has broken is that Matt Eberflus is done with the Cowboys. They move on from him as the defensive coordinator. Talk about rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. So we'll move away from that. Talk about Pete Carroll first. And look, this always felt like a reach. It always felt like a, sort of a Hail Mary by the team. Here's something amazing, though. And for people who don't know, I saw this yesterday, and you always forget these things because the Raiders cycle through so many coaches. The Raiders will now be on the hook to pay 5. Let's do the count. 5 different NFL former head coaches are getting paid by the Las Vegas Raiders. They might even have coaches that were getting paid when they were still in Oakland. I don't know. They've got 5 different coaches to pay Sam Yarnell. I mean, that is the height of incompetence. And I hate saying that because I reside in Las Vegas and I'm 15 minutes away from Allegiant Stadium. That is the height of incompetence. By the way, this isn't Pete Carroll's fault. This is as much a spy tech problem as it is anything, as much as it's a Mark Davis problem. We always everybody crushes Jerry Jones, Sam Yarnell. Everybody crushes Jerry Jones. How does Mark Davis get a relative pass compared to Jerry Jones?
Well, I think it's because Mark Davis isn't also the general manager of the franchise that he owns, plainly and simply. Jerry Jones just can't get away from being behind a microphone. That's why we don't stop talking about him. He does it to himself. Yeah. But absolute disaster class from the Las Vegas Raiders, Los Angeles Raiders. Wow, that's a 50-year throwback.
Sure.
This could not be worse from all angles. And then, even from the media people covering it, right? You have Todd McShay throwing up all over himself yesterday, saying Dante Moore's people should be calling the Raiders to find out if they're going to draft him so that he can figure out whether or not to go back to avoid the Jets. All right, well, then Todd McShay quickly exposed for his, gripe that was 10 years old with the Jets. But people quickly pointed out, and I think a lot of us are very quick to forget, the Raiders have the second longest playoff win drought in the NFL, and they don't trail the New York Jets in that regard. They trail another AFC East team, the Miami Dolphins, right? They are the only other team in the National Football League whose playoff win drought spans multiple decades. It has been really bad for a very long time in Oakland and now Las Vegas, and it's really kind of always been a disaster from a franchise perspective too. I don't know who they're going to hire, Jason. I don't know who wants the job. I think it was very strategic that even almost before they had fired Pete Carroll, the PR machine around the Raiders had quickly spun out stories about Tom Brady wanting different high-profile coaches to come in. I got news for you, Tom. High-profile coaches aren't going to want to work in that organization.
I mean, other than Brock Bowers, I know Max Crosby's great. Max Crosby may have,
gone.
I mean, he's as good as gone. Other than Brock Bowers, maybe Ashton Genty, what are you building around? And this is part of something I want to get into in the next segment. It feels like there are so many teardowns on the verge of happening going into next year. And again, I get it. The Patriots have 4 wins last year. Were they 4-13? Right? I mean, so your fortunes can change if you make the right moves and the cards fall correctly. You can do things year over year, but it feels like there's a whole bunch of teardowns coming from this year to next year around the league, and the Raiders yet again are going to be one of those. Jonathan Gannon. Speaking of teardowns, another teardown in Arizona where Gannon's out. I mean, look, with what happened with DeMercado earlier in the year, he basically had to neuter himself in front of everybody. So there was that. And then the Kyler Murray injury and the Kyler Murray play and everything that's transpired with that. You've got Trae McBride there, obviously, who had an amazing year, a record-setting year at the tight end position. And this team was in a lot of games. That's the thing. This team was competitive. They weren't, the Raiders just looked bad for 17 games. The Arizona Cardinals didn't look bad for 17 games. But it's another situation where, compared to the Raiders, I mean.
They didn't look bad for 17 games, you're right. They looked horrible for 14 games. They looked like the worst team in football. People forget this team started the season 2-0, Jason.
Yes.
And they're picking in the top 5 of the NFL draft. Like, it is the fall-off of all fall-offs. And you're right, there is talent there, right? Trae McBride, definitely, probably the best young tight end we've seen in a very long time in the National Football League, right? Marvin Harrison Jr., incredibly talented wide receiver. Michael Wilson looked like a wide receiver 1 at the end of this season. They're not going to give the reins to him because the other guy's dad played in the NFL, but that's neither here nor there. The Arizona Cardinals have an ownership problem, and this is the theme with Arizona. It is not a management problem. It is not a personnel problem. It is a Michael Bidwell problem. There is very clearly something wrong with the way that family and that man owns that football team. I don't know whether he's too meddled or whatever the case may be, but he clearly has an impact every season, about 4 weeks into the season, that lasts with that team through the entire year. So I have no hope for that franchise as long as they remain under current ownership.
They lost the last 9 games to finish the season. What's going to be interesting with Kevin Stefanski being let go, there are a lot of people that believe he will be or will have the opportunity to be a head coach in the league next year. Of the jobs that have opened up, obviously with Cleveland being the one that you take out of the mix, I wonder if there's any he even wants. Maybe the Giants? Maybe the Giants? If you've got one, you've got 10 seconds. Go ahead.
I think the job that he wants is going to open up.
Wow. I guess we'll have to use that as a tease. I wasn't planning to, but we'll use it as a tease. We've got more to do on the NFL. Don't go anywhere. All right, continuing on this Tuesday with more NFL conversation, some NBA coming up in 10 minutes, a whole bunch of headlines coming out of the association from Monday, including a major star looking like he's on the move, and it's not the one you're thinking of. That's coming up. All right, Sam Yarnell, unplanned tease at the end of the last segment, so I'm going to let you pay it off. You said Kevin Stefanski may want a job that hasn't opened up yet, but will. So tell me, what job do you think is going to open up potentially?
I don't know if there's a specific job that I had in mind, Jason, but it just feels like with the talent that Kevin Stefanski has, the prestige that he will bring into any organization. You're talking about a guy, again, who won Coach of the Year twice. How many coaches in NFL history have done that? I want to say the list is shorter than a handful long. The prestige that Kevin Stefanski holds will be sought after in, I would think at least half a dozen organizations that are currently involved in the playoffs. I just think that there is not even an outside chance. I think that there's a real possibility that Kevin Stefanski ends up the coach of a team who fires their head coach to hire Kevin Stefanski, not a team who fires their head coach to begin an open coaching search, if that makes sense.
Okay. So you don't have a particular team in mind that you want to posit?
A couple come to mind, right? Like the Eagles is one, certainly. I think, if things go super wrong in Buffalo, early in Jacksonville, that's definitely a possibility with Sean McDermott, right? I think Matt LaFleur has had a little bit of a lackluster tenure as the Packers head coach. It just feels like there are a lot of these spots where we talk about, is that coach really the one that can get them there? When Kevin Stefanski's proven you, he can take not a lot and get it pretty far.
Back-to-back last place finishes for Stefanski, by the way, and I'll be interested to see if the Giants, obviously, I'm sure the Giants are going to want to have a conversation with Kevin Stefanski as well. Don't forget, Mike McCarthy's still sitting out there, and there's some thought that obviously he's going to get another head coaching gig somewhere. It just remains to be seen where that winds up being. One spot that did not open up that we thought might was Miami. They got rid of Chris Greer, but they kept Mike McDaniel. And it sounds like they're still going to keep Mike McDaniel, who's meeting with Tua Tagovailoa this morning, as we put the show together in the morning. Meeting with Tua Tagovailoa. By the time you've seen this, we'll know what that conversation yields. But what we do know is Tua is okay with the idea of his career continuing somewhere else. Where that might be, I have no idea. How he gets there, I have no idea. But that was said yesterday with Tua making those comments. This was Mike McDaniel commenting on the Tua situation and trying to give a little bit of clarity to the situation, I guess you could say.
I'll meet with Tua tomorrow at 8 a.m. I think, first things first. I don't think anybody quite understands what it would be like to be through the ringer of a year that he's had. So to remove emotions, to have a conversation will be very healthy, and beyond that, we're still in the process of, having a GM hired. Some of these decisions that you'll want to know, like including that one, that's not a Mike McDaniel decision.
All right, can I just stop for a second? I have to. It's enough. It's enough. Can I tell you what Mike McDaniel sounds like? It just hit me. He sounds like, yeah. Were you ever in school and you had the kid sitting next to you, and the teacher would come over to collect the homework, and the kid just started making excuses? And he's trying to explain what had happened with his homework. And when I listen to Mike McDaniel, that's what he sounds like. He sounds like the kid making an excuse for why he forgot his homework. Every time I listen to him talk, it drives me nuts. So McDaniel's going to stay. Greer is out. They're going to bring in a new GM. That new GM is going to have to figure out, this dynamic between Mike McDaniel and Tua. Of all the places we've talked about teardowns already in this show, it feels like Miami needs one the most.
Well, this franchise is they have gone past the borderline of treacherous waters. They're now just full-fledged in the Bermuda Triangle in terms of power dynamics and what exactly not to do as a National Football League team, right? We've seen this operation before, and it has quite frankly never ended well. You've now got the exact situation that you never, ever, 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 ever want to have in the National Football League, with like one exception in the 175-year history of the league, right? And that is the head coach has absolute power. The head coach now has all of the power in the organization. And this is a head coach who we thought about firing 10 weeks ago? That's crazy to me. You've now got Mike McDaniel, who's going to lead this search for a new general manager. A head coach hiring a GM is never, ever, ever a good thing. It should go in reverse order. Never, ever, ever should you have a head coach who puts a GM in their role. Secondly, the Tua thing. That all going on while you're looking for a new GM who's going to be hired by the coach. It is absolutely the most dangerous place organizationally that you could be in as an NFL team right now. Gosh, the Miami Dolphins, they're like that boat from the TV commercial that's got the screen door on the bottom with the Flex Seal through it. Except instead of Flex Seal, it's like Scotch tape. You're just waiting for that whole thing to sink.
That's actually pretty good. Troy Aikman, by the way, now heavily involved with the Dolphins as well, as far as trying to figure out who their next GM is. He is involved in that search as well.
That's good. That's juicy.
Yep. Good luck with that. Other QBs and other spots where QBs may be needed. Just here in the final minute. If Aaron Rodgers leaves after this season, I don't think he's going to. And by the way, that drum beat's getting louder about him potentially coming back next year. Pittsburgh. That's obviously one spot. You've got Kirk Cousins, that whole situation in Atlanta, what that looks like. The Kyler Murray situation, which we've talked about over in Arizona. I mean, there's a whole bunch of situations here. Geno Smith. I mean, what are the Raiders going to do vis-a-vis Geno Smith? I mean, all of that to play out. I don't know. I'm probably missing more, but Sam, there's a lot of other QB situations here in the final 15 seconds.
I'll just tell you this about the Aaron Rodgers thing. Our friends over on Kalshi have the prediction market up. Will Rodgers retire before the 2026 NFL season? 66% chance right now.
That he retires?
Kalshi. That he retires.
Yeah, he's not retiring. Unless he wins a Super Bowl.
Sell.
Yeah, unless he wins a Super Bowl. We're coming back to talk some NBA next. SportsWrap continues from our studios in Las Vegas, Nevada. Glad to have you with us. Coming up in 10 minutes, Dennis Bernstein, SiriusXM NHL radio host. Also with the fourthperiod.com. Big injury in the NHL last night. He was also at the Winter Classic in Miami, which sounds like an oxymoron. Winter Classic in Miami. Be curious to get his thoughts. He's been to all of them, so I'll be fascinated to see what he has to say about how Miami played as a host for the Panthers and Rangers for the Winter Classic. Sam Yarnell, bunch of NBA notes to get to. Kurt Heelan on the show tomorrow, Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com, to talk about all the latest NBA news. Trae Young, let's start there, because, I mean, maybe we shouldn't be that surprised by it, considering, sort of the trajectory of his career and the way it's run for him in Atlanta. But Trae Young, his agent, and the organization all getting together in a room and deciding, yeah, you know what, you want to be traded, we'll trade you. So Trae Young's going to wind up somewhere. We'll see where that is. I made the point in a SportsWrap short yesterday. I just don't know how somebody's going to get him. Somebody will work out a deal, but I just don't know what he brings. He's one-dimensional. He's not a good defender. I don't know what you're getting with Trae Young versus what you're going to have to give up that makes a lot of sense for a lot of teams, or that's sending him to a spot where he has a chance to win any more than where he is now.
Yeah, so reporting coming out late last night that the Wizards are actually the front runner. Funny enough, my Washington Wizards are the leader in the clubhouse to trade for Trae Young. And obviously this is because the Wizards have something the Hawks want. That is a good player. The Hawks have something the Wizards want. That is a bad player and lots of draft picks, right? The Wizards are going to, it seems like from the reporting that we've heard from Mark Stein, offload CJ McCollum in this deal. And that's where it gets complicated, because the Mavericks have been rumored to work their way into it in an Anthony Davis move. And things could get really sticky here in the next month leading up to the trade deadline. But I'll tell you this, from a Hawks perspective, it's tough. They've done a great job from a PR standpoint of putting out all of these reports to the reporters that we're going to work with the agent. The agent's going to work with the team. Here's the reality of the situation. That contract is so awful. The Hawks are going to have to give copious draft capital to get a team to take that on. And a team like the Wizards has the ability to do that in this season. It's a great move for the Wizards because all they're going to do is get draft capital. Trae Young will come in. He's had injury problems so far this season. He'll sit out the rest of the year, and the tank will fully be on in Washington. I love this move for the Wizards, but for the Hawks, I mean, you have to really think between this Trae Young situation, the reshapes development or lack thereof, I guess. It's really starting to feel like this organization in Atlanta is doing more harm than good for them than they are for themselves.
And they owe them about, I think, $95 million between this year and next year. As far as the Trae Young salary is concerned. The Knicks and Pistons last night in Detroit. Granted, the Knicks were sitting a couple of guys, but, I mean, they got pistol whipped in Detroit last night in a big way. On the same day, their owner, James Dolan, goes on a New York sports radio station and says, we don't need to do anything. We could stand pat. The team as currently constituted could win an NBA championship. I wonder if he might be reconsidering after what he saw last night.
The timing was, it was just, it was
really
a little too Knicks for all of us.
Yes.
Listen, for me, from a Knicks standpoint, yes, the Pistons have been playing good basketball all year. The Pistons continue. They had that little lull, right? But they figured it out. They've gotten hot again. The Celtics, man, the fact that the Knicks have gotten passed by the Celtics, it felt like for the Knicks, they would skid a little bit, and they had that weird thing going on with they don't perform as well on the road as, we saw last night in Detroit. But as long as they were holding off the Celtics, it kind of felt like, they probably will be able to contend for an NBA title this year. Man, I don't know. It's starting to feel, and I know the coaching is a lot better. There is no question about that. That is objectively a fact, but it's just starting to feel a little bit too old Knicksy to me.
The Jaylen Brown thing in Boston has been fascinating too, because there's always been this weird dynamic. Not that I was planning to talk about this in this segment of Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, which one? And it feels like Jaylen Brown has basically made the case for the fact that it's Jaylen Brown first and foremost there in Boston. Just saying.
You'll remember, Jason, you and I talked, was it last season or 2 years ago? We talked in the middle of the season about them moving on from Jaylen Brown, right? It felt like everybody in Boston was sold out on Jaylen Brown. Look at what he is doing for this team right now. It is incredible.
I agree. We've got problems in Oklahoma City. The Thunder are 6-6. 6-6 over their last 12 games. I mean, it's been a disaster. I don't know what's going on there, Sam, and maybe you've got some idea. I know Shai Gilgeous-Alexander made some comments recently that got some attention where he basically said, we're not as good as people think we are, which seemed to, and everybody's like, well, they've kind of stunk since Shai Gilgeous-Alexander said that. But 6-6 over their last 12. I mean, we were talking about this team potentially being all-time great. And now all of a sudden, I'm wondering whether they're even going to be the top seed in the West.
I completely agree, Jason. It's mystifying what has happened with this team. And, I think there is something to be said maybe about the hot start that they had. Maybe this was bound to happen. Maybe this is not sustainable. And as much as we loved what we saw last year and through the whole playoffs, with as much basketball as this franchise has played over the course of the last 365 days, maybe it just wasn't realistic for them to be an all-time NBA team this year.
Yeah, it's possible. But going to be fascinating to watch as we move into the second half of the NBA season. Kurt Heelan will be on the show tomorrow. Dennis Bernstein joins us to talk some hockey next. Welcome back to the show. We'll wrap things up with some odds and ends coming up in 10 minutes, including some college football news you can use. FCS championship was fantastic last night. Football's delivered the last couple of days. There's no question about that. Hockey always delivers, doesn't it, Dennis Bernstein?
It certainly does, Jason. It's the Winter Classic was amazing despite the haters, and I think, Jason, I think there's 32 teams in the league. I think 31 teams have a shot at the playoffs at this point. So who needs a play-in tournament? Who needs an NBA Cup? We've got our playoffs already in January.
The Winter Classic we'll get to in just a couple minutes with Dennis Bernstein, who does a great job over at SiriusXM NHL Radio, my own stomping grounds there. Did I ever tell you this story? This is a true story. So my very first year at Sirius, may have been my second year, 03 or 04, they had just launched Sirius NHL Radio. Sure. And Don LaGreca and I think Joe Tollison, if I'm not mistaken, they were the original hosts of a show, and I was a board op on this show.
Oh boy. Wow.
This is like 22 years ago.
Sure.
Yeah, and I got to work and got to know Don and Joe Tollison, but crazy. So it just hit me that I actually have a connection to Sirius NHL Radio, which was then Sirius NHL Radio. Now it's Sirius XM, but just crazy to think about. 22 years ago, Sirius launched NHL Radio. So anyway, let's get to some NHL items and start with Igor Shesterkin. The Rangers losing their stud goaltender to a leg injury last night. Yeah. And it wasn't like anything nefarious happened where he got hit or anything. It just kind of bent funny. And, one of those sorts of injuries. What's the sense? I mean, by the time people see this, there may be an update on the story, but from what you saw, this didn't look good, the way he came off the ice and everything.
Yeah, as of Tuesday morning, there's no update. All Mike Sullivan said, the coach of the Rangers, was they're going to do additional tests. It looks like a knee. And this team just can't get any luck with respect to injuries, right? They're missing JT Miller. Adam Fox just came back. I think he's been played 4 games. They lose, and Jonathan Quick's been great, right? Could he manage a load of a number one goaltender at his age? I'm not sure. So it didn't look good. He couldn't put weight on his left leg. He's a goaltender, which makes it worse. So, you got to cross your fingers and toes if you're a Ranger fan or just a hockey fan in general, because he's one of the league players in the league. You don't want to see him lost. But this is a devastating injury, not just from a playing standpoint, but from an emotional standpoint. Right? He's one of the leaders. He's the guy they look to. And this is a team that can't seem to score goals, Jason, so you need good goaltending. And a crazy stat, they haven't won a game in regulation at Madison Square Garden since November, which is nuts. So this would be a massive blow for this team. They're already on the outside looking in with respect to a playoff spot. This can't help them. So you got to wish the best for Shesterkin, and hopefully he bounces back.
Is there a trade to be made if it does turn out this is long-term? Is there a deal that has to be made?
I don't see a team trading a decent goaltender to the Rangers to help them. No, absolutely not. They're going to have to go with Jonathan Quick and whoever they have in the system in the NHL. I think they'll be riding and dining with Jonathan Quick, which isn't the worst thing in the world, because if you look at Quick's numbers, they've been really, really good since he came to New York. But it's the question of the quantity of work. Can he manage that workload?
Does he get exposed if he has to play more than what he has been playing so far, obviously, is the question. Speaking of the Rangers, you got to see them in the Winter Classic in Miami. You've seen a number of these Winter Classics. Have you been to all of them?
No. Really? I'm not going to Seattle, Jay. No, I wasn't going to Seattle. I'm not a Seattle fan, so I didn't go there. So I've gone to, let's see, going back to 2010, Fenway Park, Bruins Flyers. I think 2013 or 14 I was at Philly, Citizens Bank for Flyers Rangers. And I've been to a ton of stadium. I've probably been to more Stadium Series games than Winter Classics. But this was and I know there are haters out there and say, well, it's not really the Winter Classic. I'll tell you a little story. Between periods, I talked to Brian Boyle. Does a great job, former player. He's on NHL Network. He played at Stadium Series games in Yankee Stadium 14 out of the lockout. It was 17 degrees at Yankee Stadium. I was there. I actually went to the Stadium Series game at Dodger Stadium, left in the third period, flew cross country to do 2 games at Yankee Stadium. Right? It was 17 degrees and windy inside Yankee Stadium. Brian Boyle said, "Do you think we liked playing those games? Do you think that was fun for us?" It was 62 degrees at game time in Miami. I was walking around with my wife. The fans were having a great time. They sold the park out. They opened the roof. Fake snow comes down. People have to understand one thing. This event has evolved to a situation where it's catered towards the markets being played in. So if you live in Toronto and you didn't like to see the Rangers and the Panthers in Florida, that's fine, because the game really isn't for you. And until they stop selling tickets, because there's been 45 outdoor games in total, they've sold 54,000 seats on average. It's not going away. It was a great event if you're there. You have to understand, when you buy that ticket, you're not going to see a hockey game. You're going to see history. You're going to see an event. You're going to see a spectacle. And that's why it's so well attended, and that's why the fans enjoy it, and that's why it's a staple of the NHL right now.
I've only got about 30 seconds, which feels like we're shortchanging Colorado. I know they lost the other night to the Panthers, but they are still playing at this incredible clip. We can put the Thunder to the side because in the NBA because they've hit the skids. This is still the best story in sports right now that it feels like nobody's talking about. 30 seconds, go.
Yeah, a record-breaking pace. They are. It's almost like the league is one team in 31 teams. But here's the thing. Gabriel Landeskog just got hurt. Devin Taves just got hurt. Mackenzie Blackwood, one of their goaltenders, is on IR. The only thing that can derail this team is injuries, and now they're starting to get hit with injuries. If they stay healthy, I don't see any team beating this. They're that good. If you're not a hockey fan, tune into the Colorado Avalanche games. They're great games to watch.
Dennis Bernstein, thefourthperiod.com, Sirius XM NHL Radio. Always appreciate you, my friend.
Likewise, JP. Thanks for the time.
All right, just about time to put the wraps on this baby for a Tuesday. Couple of reminders before we go, if you haven't done so yet. Make sure to subscribe to the Sports Wrap with Jason Page podcast. It is the audio version of this show, Monday through Friday, available wherever you get your podcasts. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Odyssey, Amazon. Anybody who carries a podcast carries this show via podcast. It works just as well in its audio form as it does its video form. So go and check that out today. Also, the Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. This is the place for all things Sports Wrap with Jason Page, including the TV version of the show, Monday through Friday, available there before it's available anywhere else. Early in the afternoon, you can get it. So the very latest from the show on the Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel, 45 minutes commercial-free, available on our YouTube channel. Also, Sports Wrap Shorts. These are 1 to 3 minute long videos, usually only about a minute long, covering the top stories in sports. Something breaks, boom, we're right there with Sports Wrap Shorts on the Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. Also, the biggest games every night. We're covering those as well on the Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. Sports Wrap Shorts available there. Also available on our TikTok. Sports Wrap Jason Page is the name for that. And on our Instagram, you guessed it, Sports Wrap Jason Page. And without any further delay on this Tuesday edition of Sports Wrap, it's time for some odds and ends. Odds and ends, Sam Yarnell. Let's focus our attention for just a moment on the FCS football championship game last night. Illinois State trying to win its first ever FCS title, and Montana State trying to win its first title in 41 years. I figured Montana State had won one. I get them all confused. North Dakota, there's all these different, Montana, all those schools in the Central Plains. I didn't know Montana State hadn't won in 41 years. Anyway, for those that didn't see it, it goes to overtime. You've got like blocked field goals, blocked extra points. Illinois State scores a touchdown. They miss the extra point, or it gets blocked. Montana State comes back in their overtime possession, scores the touchdown, kicks the game-winning extra point, and wins it 35-34. Heartbreaking loss for the kids at Illinois State and those Redbirds, Sam Yarnell.
Yeah, hope you had the over in that one.
If you're betting FCS, we've got a number for you.
Whoa. There is money to be made in the FCS playoffs, my friend. But that said, yes, the Cinderella storybook run for Illinois State comes to an end. It was fun to watch them beat UC Davis and then roll against Villanova. But, you go up against, I know it's been a long time since Montana State won the whole darn thing, but between Montana State and Montana, you mentioned North Dakota State, South Dakota State also. It's tough sledding in the FCS, especially up there in the northern part of it. So, Montana State, congratulations. This is a program that, like I said, it's basked in a couple of shadows, and it finally summited the peak this year. They beat their rival in the semifinals in Montana. Credit to Montana State, man. What a season. And yeah, heartbreaking for Illinois State. You can't draw it up worse than that.
Great vibe and atmosphere in that game last night over at Vanderbilt. Charlie Weiss Jr., some college football odds and ends for you. Charlie Weiss Jr. will be on the sidelines, sources say, for Ole Miss in their college football playoff semifinals, Sam Yarnell. They're keeping the band kind of together.
If I am Lane Kiffin sitting at my beautiful, wonderful, however many $1 million mansion in Baton Rouge, I'm sweating, and I'm sweating bullets, because in the last 2 days, here are 3 important things that have happened, which I think Lane Kiffin was betting against all 3 happening. First, you had Trinidad Chambliss saying that that if he's granted another year of eligibility, he will be returning to Ole Miss. That's not good, but okay, if you're Lane Kiffin, you still got Kawan Lacey, right? Then Kawan Lacey says, actually, I'm going back to Ole Miss no matter what. Sorry, Lane. And now the guy who, when you signed this whole deal, you were like, this guy's coming with me no matter what, right? I'm taking this guy. You're not getting him. Well, it's taking you a little bit longer to get him than you thought. If I'm Lane Thomas and I'm LSU and I'm Governor
Lane
Landry,
Kiffin. Do you mean Lane Kiffin? Not Lane Thomas.
Yeah, I got the
Lane
Boston
Thomas, the
Nationals
baseball player. Okay.
If I'm Lane Kiffin and I'm Governor Landry right now, sitting at LSU, I'm getting real nervous about all these plans that I made before I left Ole Miss, because it looks like they're all falling apart right in front of your face.
Yeah, it is kind of fascinating to watch all the machinations here. With this LSU Ole Miss situation, and with Chambliss coming back, Lacey coming back next year, Ole Miss already looks poised to be a beast next year as far as the SEC is concerned. But we'll have to obviously wait and see what happens there. By the way, one last quick one here for odds and ends. Steve Phelps out, NASCAR commissioner, announcing his resignation after more than 20 years. As a result of some of those text messages that came out during the whole...
You were right.
Yeah. There were going to be heads that rolled.
Discovery got ugly.
Telling you, man. That's why you got to nip that stuff in the bud. Settle those lawsuits. It's going to do it for us. Thanks to Dennis Bernstein. Thanks to you, Sam Yarnell. Thanks to all of you at home for watching. We'll see you back here on Wednesday for more Sports Wrap. Kurt Heelan joins us to talk NBA at that time. Oh, Nick Ferguson will be on the show, too. Talk some NFL with him then. See ya.